The good news is we're all in this together. And when we see we're together, we can work things out. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with me and him. George Harvey and the very famous Tom Fennell, who everybody recognizes. Local philanthropist. Okay, every day I get up early. Today I was up at 4 o'clock. Started work about 10.
Why so late?
Yeah, why so late? Actually, I got out of bed at 2 minutes before 4. But I make coffee, sit down, start on the news, and I was on the news until about 9.
Well,
actually
day,
on
huh?
the news until about 8, and then
okay.
And then I have I have a bunch of blogs I do, but geoharvey.com is the blog we're going to be working with, and the articles that we're reading about today are all on that blog. So if you want to look at the articles, go to the date that we mentioned. We're starting on the 3rd of May, and there's 10 or 15 items each day. You know, I've done a number of things, inventorying things, and one thing that I found was that this show is our 265th show.
Okay.
Okay. Another thing was the items that I bring up here, for everyone that I put at the blog, well, for everyone that we talk about here, there's 3 to 5 that are at the blog, but we don't talk about. I say 3 or 4.
So there's a lot of stuff on the blog.
There's a lot of stuff, and I do 10 to 15 items every day. For each of those, I open usually about 2 to 3 news items, and I decide for some and against others to put them on the blog. For each of those, I have to look at about 15 news headlines. So the 26,000 plus items that are at the blog represent about 750,000 headlines that I've looked at over a period of 6 years. No wonder I'm bald. Anyway.
Well, some of these things are well worth looking at.
Yeah.
And we don't have the time to
No.
devote to some of those things that are well worth looking at.
No,
I mean, we could devote the whole show
We
to
could.
some of them.
Yes.
So I'll try and alert you to some that I've noticed that are particularly appealing.
Yeah.
But everybody's got different tastes.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we should start off.
Yeah, it'd be a good idea.
We've got an item to start with from an organization that provides us with material every
Let's
once in a
get
while
that
called
picture up there.
phys.org, phys.org. And that is a picture of American farmland.
Which one
You
is
got a title for this? I have the title.
I'm just trying to figure out which mouse is working here. I got a title.
Yeah, okay.
Are public objections to wind farms overblown? And that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Renewable energy researchers wanted to see how much local opposition there is to existing wind farms across the United States. With funding from the DOE, they teamed up with to undertake the largest scientific study to date on how people who live near wind farms perceive them.
Well, this is interesting because right here in Vermont, there's considerable organized opposition to wind.
Organized.
Yeah, it's definitely organized. We know who's doing at least some of the organizing.
Yes.
And it's the same people showing up at meetings.
Yes.
You know, and we'll talk about something similar to that later on.
Yes, we
which
will.
has nothing to do with wind.
No,
but,
and it doesn't have anything to do with anybody in Vermont either.
Right, but it's the same idea.
It is the same idea.
Well, let me give you a takeaway here.
Yep.
Most surveys suggest that the public generally supports wind and solar power, but opposition from local communities and residents sometimes blocks or delays specific new projects.
Right.
Now, to give an example right off the bat, Cape Wind.
Yes.
The Cape Wind
absolutely.
project of about 4 or 5 years ago.
Which, by the way, was supported by the Massachusetts and Maine Audubon Societies And when I
Interesting.
pointed that out online, I got, the thing that I pointed out got a comment from a leader of a Vermont anti-wind organization, which said the Audubon Society was bought off by big wind.
Well, in case of case wind, a bunch of these residents got together.
Yes.
And they started suing.
Yes.
And they had 15 lawsuits.
Yes.
And I guess the company behind it said, you know, we're not going to fight all of these in court. Even if we win them all.
They went bankrupt.
They did go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Well, in any case, it's not there.
It's not there, despite
And-
the backing of the Audubon Society that was bought off by big wind.
And the media coverage of the attitudes for wind energy tends to be very anecdotal.
Yes, and it also tends to try to balance things, which means that the number of people who are opposed to it are given equal time with the number of people who are in
Well,
favor.
they want to give both sides of the
Both sides of the story. Well, I can tell you something, and this goes back to what I just said earlier. I've looked through hundreds of thousands of news headlines, and years ago, I was alerted to the fact that there were objections to wind power, specifically relating to property values near wind turbines, human health, birds and bats being killed, other environmental damage. So in that time, every time I saw anything that related to wind power and any of those subjects, I would open it up and look at it. Now there are certain things, there are certain news organizations that I simply will not look at. One of
Because you know what they're going to say in advance.
well, one of them is an organization called Brinkwire, and I don't look at their stuff because everything they print or publish is plagiarized. And
Well, that's interesting.
I can demonstrate this pretty clearly. All you have to do is take the first sentence of their stuff. Google it,
and find out where
and
they
then
got it.
where they got it, and you'll notice every time they do this that the name of the author has been changed.
Oh, that's interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Anyway, other organizations are Breitbart, the Cato Institute, Heritage Foundation, Canadian Free Press, and one of the things that happened early on was I saw that they were saying things very different from what other people were saying. And so I tried to find out what their sources were, and I saw that very often, they never say anything good about renewable energy as far as I can tell. Very often their sources were obsolete. For example, they would cite the Energy Information Administration, which by the way is always wrong in its projections, and that's demonstrably true, and they even admit it. But they would cite that, and then they would cite news that was 3 years old. So if you needed to know what the price of solar panels was, they'd talk about prices that were 3 years old. Now this is in a situation where the price has gone down 90% in the last 10 years. 3-year-old prices are way out of date. But also those organizations are funded by an interesting group of people who get their money from fossil fuels. So anyway.
An interesting takeaway from here.
Yeah.
Only 16% of all residents within 5 miles of wind farms had ever heard the turbines making any noise.
Yeah. And the thing that I found, Tom, in the time I've been looking at all of these headlines, I only found one article that said that the value of real estate near wind farms had gone down. And the
Well,
value,
generally it's been going up.
Yeah.
For one thing, there's tax revenues from the
yeah,
wind farms.
and the
And
article,
people like that.
the article was about a change that is not statistically significant.
Okay.
Now what that means is, from a statistical point of view, they can't tell why the prices went down. They may have had nothing to do with the wind farms. On the other hand, there's a slew of articles that said there's no change, or the values of real estate actually went up in an amount that was statistically insignificant.
Well, a lot of it is kind of based on fear.
A lot of it's based on fear. The same thing was true of human health. The same thing was true of environmental destruction.
Yeah.
The support for the idea that human health was threatened comes from in manners that are entirely anecdotal, such as an article that said 2 guys rented a cabin near a wind turbine for the weekend and got sick. Okay, I'm sorry that those 2 guys got sick.
This isn't original, and I've said it on the show before. It was
Yes.
originated from some radio jockey in Australia.
Yep.
When he said wind turbine syndrome is real.
Yes.
And it's spread by it's caused by a virus.
Yes.
And a virus is spread by word of mouth.
Right. Well, we could sit here and talk
Yeah,
about
we
this
could talk
forever,
about it.
and we have to get ahead.
Let's move on. We got an interesting here. This one is interesting because it's a very timely thing.
Yes, it
Vermont
is.
Public Radio is talking
Yep.
about this all day long.
Yes.
Bugged out. The CDC blames warmer weather, not climate change. And you're going to tell us what bugged out means.
This is from Grist. Ticks are making us sicker. Illnesses spread by ticks more than doubled between 2004 and 2016. A new report from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention shows. Mosquito-borne illnesses are also on the rise. The lead author, declining to address the, quote, politically fraught issue of climate change, end quote, blames warmer weather.
Well, this is an interesting article. If you guys look it up, you're going to find it's a very short article about ticks.
About ticks.
In fact, this particular Grist article is 8 separate articles, all good, all short, on climate change.
Yes.
Not just ticks.
Yes.
But right now, VPR is talking about ticks.
Talking about ticks. Well, they should. By the way, you and I, everybody it seems in Vermont knows somebody who either has had or certainly people are afraid of Lyme disease.
Yeah.
And Lyme disease
And they should be.
is a serious problem in
Absolutely.
Vermont. There were 5 cases recorded in 1995. And as far as I could determine, none before that. Oh, by the way, Lyme disease, first recorded medically
Quite a while ago.
10 years before the American Revolution.
That's quite a while ago.
There's a conspiracy theory that said it was invented by the CIA.
Yes.
But I don't think the CIA was in existence in 1765.
You never can tell.
You never can tell. Maybe they created the country. But nevertheless, it was first described on the island of Lewis, which is in the Outer Hebrides,
Yeah.
and is the birthplace of, question, you know?
I don't know.
Donald Trump's mother.
Aha. The thick plottins.
Thick ones. Anyway.
Takeaway from the article,
Yep.
total installed capacity of renewable energy sources in the U.S. now provides over 1/5 of the total available generating capacity.
This is renewables.
Renewables.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now. Right now.
That means that it's more than nuclear. Well, we knew that already. Okay.
Nuclear was only 4 megawatts last year.
Oh, the amount,
The amount,
added,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, the nuclear additions are,
Well, it's sort of expensive to build.
it's extremely expensive.
You're not
and
going to see too
extremely
many new
slow.
ones.
There are people who say that we need to put nuclear plants online in order to deal with climate change. But the fact of the matter is you can get solar plus battery, wind plus battery online faster for about half the cost or less.
The times they are changing.
They are changing. Okay,
Well, we
we've
got a
got
nice picture coming
picture
up
here.
This is nice too.
Beaver Creek, and this is from Clean Technica.
Mid-American Energy, that's a utility, okay, to add 550 megawatts of wind to Adair County, Iowa. Now there's a lot of activity going on in the central, north,
There is
Midwest.
indeed. Iowa energy
Iowa,
provider Mid-American Energy has announced plans this week to build 2 new wind farms with a combined capacity of 550 megawatts in Adair County. This is Adair County, Iowa. They will be part of the company's previously announced 2 gigawatt Wind XI project.
I think that's Roman numeral 11.
Well, yeah. Wind 11.
Yeah.
The Wind 11 project is the largest economic development venture in Iowa's history.
Now that says something right there.
It does indeed.
does, yeah.
Yeah.
And here's a takeaway from that. In addition to its aim of installing 1,000 wind turbines across the state, Mid-American Energy expects the project to provide thousands of construction jobs and hundreds of operation jobs.
Right.
It should generate enough to support more than 840,000 Iowan homes. This is big. This is a big
Yeah.
thing.
Yep. And yeah, okay, we are up to Saturday, May 5th.
And
with
we're
an
coming back home.
item from Valley News. I just switched the picture, but it's not, doesn't relate to Valley News.
That's the next, that
It's the
picture is
next
with the
one,
next
yes.
one. So, Vermont reduces incentives for renewables.
Yeah.
Not necessarily good news, but not surprising.
No, it's not. Vermont regulators are reducing the financial incentives for electric consumers who install renewable energy systems and get credit on their electric bills for the power they provide to the grid. The Vermont Public Utility Commission said the reduction was needed to balance the program's impact on electric rates.
So basically the feed-through tariffs that they're giving to people, the money they're getting back from the excess electricity they generate is less.
Yes.
And Connecticut's doing something similar and maybe more drastic. We'll talk about that later.
Yes.
I'll give you a takeaway from it, though. Renewable energy is flourishing and has reached a level of maturity where it can continue to be deployed with lower incentives.
You know,
Well, that's what they were supposed to do.
Yes, it was. And what's going to happen in many cases here is that people will be buying solar power with batteries because it's more reliable than grid power with solar. And in many cases, they will be going off the grid altogether.
Well, I was thinking just that. I was thinking, you know, the power companies they're buying my surplus power. They're going to stop buying my surplus power or give me less for it. So what am I going to do? I'm going to buy a battery. I'm going to save that surplus power so I can use it.
That's right. Yeah.
I use it at night. The sun doesn't shine at night. Duh.
Okay, we've got an item from Rappler here.
Yeah, let's get now we got the
Now
picture
we've got
coming
the
up.
picture we can put up.
UN calls current climate funding an umbrella in a hurricane.
Yeah. Patricia Espinosa, this executive secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, said we need to invest, we need to invest trillions of dollars protecting ourselves from the impact of climate change. She said, quote, trying to address climate change at current financial levels is like walking into a Category 5 hurricane protected only by an umbrella, end quote.
I'm just going to put that picture up to explain what it is. That's a kid in the Philippines.
Yes.
And he's just moving his bicycle through a flood.
Yes.
There's nothing special about it except that, you know, that land used to be dry.
Yes.
Under the Paris Agreement, countries make pledges that outline what actions they will take to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Donald, are you listening? Espinosa said more funding is needed to support countries as they scale up emissions reduction. Not millions, not billions, but trillions.
And the International Renewable Energy Agency came out with their study a couple of weeks ago. We talked about it on the show, that said that we need to multiply our efforts to get off of fossil fuels by a factor of 6 in order to keep climate change to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
We're nowhere near that.
And people,
nowhere near that.
If you think 1.5 degrees Celsius is not very much, well, go wander through the fields. Don't bother checking for ticks when you get back, because obviously they're
Now this is an
tiny
interesting,
plot.
this one coming up is an interesting but sneaky article.
A sneaky article
Yeah.
from Clean Technica.
It's from Clean Technica.
Yeah.
Volkswagen doubles the EV battery order to $48 billion.
Just 6 weeks ago, VW boss Matthias Müller stunned the automotive world when he revealed that the company had placed orders for EV batteries and components worth $25 billion.
Now that woke everybody up.
Yeah. Now, VW has a new headman, Herbert Diess, who told investors at the annual meeting that VW has signed orders for almost double that amount.
Now, that makes you think, what does VW know that we don't know? By the way, if you're looking this up on the article, the link that is on the article just directs you to a picture of the battery. So you'll have to look it up on Google.
Yes.
It's a good article to read.
The link for Clean Technica goes to a battery?
Yeah. It's interesting looking battery. It looks like a mousetrap. It's the battery that's in the car.
I didn't know that was the case. That is my fault. I put the wrong link in. It should go straight to Clean Technica's.
Well, it is a Clean Technica site.
Yeah.
But that's the only things on the site is the battery.
It's the picture for the battery.
That's in the car.
Has a different URL than the picture for the article, and I put up the wrong URL when I put this up. I'll have to fix that.
Well, here's an explanation for what's going on.
Yep.
By 2020, we will offer our customers more than 25 new electric models and more than 20 plug-in hybrids. We aim to put the world's largest fleet of electrical vehicles on the road. This is Volkswagen talking.
You know what?
We will need more than 200 gigawatt hours worth of batteries annually by 2025. That's a lot, guys.
Yes, it is.
For now, no European automaker battery factory is on the horizon, so they're buying all of this stuff from China.
From China, or from Tesla, or possibly from Sonnen. Sonnen might come up with something.
With this much being bought, you can better believe they're going to be making them in Europe.
The one thing about this that really struck my eye was that they were talking about orders for $48 billion worth of batteries. Now, when we talked about VW's diesel emissions scandal, I remember looking at that and figuring out that VW at that time, and it may have changed since, but it won't have changed horrifically, had a market value of something in the 50s of billions of dollars. And what that means is that the value of their stock in the stock market is not a whole lot greater than the value of these battery orders that they're placing.
That's interesting.
This is
comparison.
a big order.
Yeah.
Big order.
Well, reading between the lines here, in Europe, diesel cars are very big.
Yeah.
Everybody's driving diesel cars,
Yep.
Not like over here. And VW took quite a serious blow with their nonsense about lying about emissions. Even though some of the other guys were also lying, VW's the ones that got caught.
Yes.
And so their sales of diesels have plummeted in Europe.
Absolutely.
And I think they're taking the right way out. They're going to say, okay, guys, you don't want our diesels anymore. We're going to get into electric big.
Yes, I think that you're right about that.
And I think they are on the right side of the curve right now.
I believe you're right. Okay.
We got another picture coming up here.
And another article from Clean Technica. Look at that. Wow.
That's a nice, I love some of these pictures. I really do. These come from the articles too, don't they?
Usually they do. Sometimes I find pictures at Wikimedia Commons.
U.S. wind development surges as pipeline exceeds 30 gigawatts.
Now,
30 gigawatts.
This is interesting because we were just talking about a little over 30 gigawatts of natural gas plants coming online this year.
Yeah.
And this is 30 gigawatts in the pipeline for wind power. And how many gigawatts are in the pipeline for solar? I don't know. The demand for wind energy surged through the first quarter of 2018, pushing the country's wind development pipeline to over 33 gigawatts. The American Wind Energy Association said the AWEA has tracked new announcements of over 5,500 megawatts. This represents a 40% year-over-year increase over the same quarter last year. Do you really think that natural gas will have the majority of new capacity this year? I wonder.
I'd bet against it. I would. I mean,
Yeah.
It's economics.
It's economics.
It's economics,
Yeah.
and the economics are looking better and better for renewables.
Yes.
Every time we turn around.
These plants that are coming online, natural gas plants, are already nearly finished. I just switched the picture by accident.
How'd that get there?
I'll leave it. It'll be in an upcoming article. our viewers don't see it. They will see it in a moment.
Well,
Anyway, they can see it in the background. They might not tell what it is, but there it is. I don't know. So should we move on?
well, the word is getting out that wind power is an excellent source
Yes.
of affordable, reliable, and clean
Yeah,
energy.
absolutely.
Strong demand for wind power is fueling an economic engine
Yeah,
that's supporting a record 105,000 U.S. wind jobs.
yeah.
You can't knock that.
It's
And
hard
the
to beat.
graphs, and this is very interesting, show nearly exponential growth.
Well, the growth is exponential, has been exponential. The growth of solar has been exponential. The growth of natural gas, we'll see. Anyway, should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay.
The picture is for the next one
Yeah,
after.
that's right.
but
After
that's
this
okay.
this article, we're up to Sunday, May 6th, and we've got an article from the BBC.
This is bad news for bats.
Bats and bears.
Extreme weather potentially catastrophic for bats. Yeah, bats and bears are both suffering the same.
And
The
the
same
two
thing.
articles came up side by side the same day. So
Interesting.
the bears is the next one. This is bats. Extreme weather appears to be disrupting the life cycle of European bats. Scientists were alarmed to find that some bats in Portugal skipped winter hibernation altogether this year, while others gave birth early. The finding adds to growing fears that rising temperatures are having unpredictable effects on bats, birds, and other wildlife.
Well, with the bats, what's going on is they're not hibernating.
Hibernating. Hibernating.
Hibernating. And
I think I've been hibernating all my life.
instead of hibernating, they're reproducing.
Yes.
And the little bats are coming out, and they're looking around for the insects, and the insects ain't there yet.
Yes.
So they're
In trouble.
they're in trouble.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's very similar for the bears.
Yep. And
And
here is where we have
supports, but
we should just
Yeah,
go
let's
to
get
the
this
next
picture
article.
up here.
Everybody's been hearing about it. We might
Let's
as well
get
show
the
'em
picture
what it
up
is.
there so you can
This
see
is
what's
from
really going
a
on.
publication called the Independent Recorder.
In case you can't figure it out, that's a bear using a cell phone. As winter warms, bears can't sleep. Plus, they are truly getting into trouble.
As climate change leads to warmer winters, American black bears are changing their hibernation routines. In some cases, the bears are not hibernating at all, staying awake all winter. But with droughts, they might not find enough food in the wild.
Well, that's similar to the bats, but the bears are finding their food elsewhere.
Yes,
And that's getting into the trouble part
they're
of it.
getting into dumpster diving and knocking over trash cans and
This came
raiding
from the article.
bird feeders.
A resident found her kitchen door open and wet paw prints entering the house. Going around the kitchen table into the pantry, where the bear took a package of macaroni and a bag of Cheetos.
Macaroni and Cheetos. Oh my gosh. I'll
Climate
tell you.
change is increasing the likelihood and intensity of the drought that's causing this for the bears.
Yes, absolutely. This is a serious problem. The bears and the bats don't have time to sleep, but there isn't enough moisture to raise the
To get the food.
food. So they're in trouble. And you know, when I was living in New Jersey many years ago, there was a situation where the police did a search of the Great Swamp because they thought they got word that there was a murderer holed up in the Great Swamp. The Great Swamp is an
I know the Great Swamp.
area
I've
in
been down
northern
there.
New Jersey. It's several miles long and
Used to
a
go
couple
canoeing
miles
down
across.
there.
Really? Anyway, they beat the Great Swamp and they came to an island in the middle of it. And on the island, they found the murderer, a black bear, and this is an island 20 feet wide and 80 feet long. They found the murderer, a black bear, and an Appalachian cougar.
Wow.
And they said, you've never seen a murderer so anxious to give himself up. But they took the cougar to Florida because cougars, they were told by federal authorities, were extinct north of Florida. That's no explanation of how one was in the Great Swamp, which, by the way, the local residents had been complaining about for years and years.
Can't
And
be. It's a
since
mirage.
then, you know,
They
no,
don't
and
exist.
They
Says here in the book.
And of course, there's sightings of them all over the place. But the black bear they took to Pennsylvania because there's a black bear population in Pennsylvania. I got news for you. There's a black bear population in suburban New Jersey.
Oh yeah,
And-
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a famous bear in suburban New Jersey, very close to New York City. Used to walk upright like a man.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And some hunter killed him.
Oh.
And he was famous, you know.
Yeah.
He'd be walking through the streets, sauntering through the streets. I like to say he was carrying a newspaper.
I
but
would
he
not
wasn't.
want to get into an argument with a bear. I did see a black bear here in Brattleboro, just behind the that school on Canal Street.
Wow, that's where I live. Oh, no, I know. I lived on the Green Street School. Yeah.
Do you know the one that I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah. It's not a school anymore?
I don't think it is.
Yeah,
but
it's administrative offices or
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But there was in the, just in that area, and there was a black bear in the parking lot of that school, and I called the police, and they came with a whole bunch of police cars and officers who were armed with shotguns, and they didn't shoot the bear.
Is there a sign there that says no bears allowed?
If there is, the bear didn't pay attention. Okay, we're up to Monday, May 7th, and we've got to move along.
This
as
is
I
an
always say in the
interesting
middle of the
article. This is a
show.
very interesting article.
This is from Singularity Hub.
Well, I got a list of a bunch of them, and it's surprising when you look at the list, but it's really not surprising.
Yeah.
Thanks to the rise of renewable energy, grids may end up not being necessary.
Yes.
Okay.
This is something you've been saying
Yeah.
all along, very, very often.
Now, Ethiopia is building a 6-gigawatt dam on the Blue Nile River, which is more than 4 times what it's currently generating.
Do they need this power?
They're going to sell it.
Yeah, I guess.
Mini microgrids or microgrids are springing up in rural areas as well, and they're often powered by renewable sources. We've talked about that on
Yes, we
the
have
show.
many times.
Mobile phones. Forget landlines. Millions who've never had home phones have jumped directly to using cell phones. And that's very significant. Okay, a second order consequence here is a beneficial consequence. Basic reading, writing, and math skills are improving.
Yeah.
Improved farming, improved food production, better health care. All of these are results of the leapfrogging of the technology. And in most every industry mentioned, the superstar of African progress is the mobile phone.
Yep.
Interesting developments.
We've got to move quickly now to keep ourselves.
And we got 18 minutes left, and we are moving along.
Yeah. Plaster rope is what.
Plastics and the environment.
In what seems to be an about face from a stance 2 years ago, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo introduced a bill calling for a ban of single-use plastic carriers bags by 2019. The governor, who will stand for re-election in November of 2018, said the proposed statewide ban is part of an effort to fight the, quote, blight of plastic bags, end quote.
Well, why there is opposition to this? Because there's a lot of good provisions in this bill.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing that the solar and environmental groups are opposing is the fact it's eliminating net metering,
Yes.
under which Connecticut solar owners have traditionally been paid the retail electric rate for the power they sell back to the grid during times that they're not using it.
Right.
Okay, and this could be a significant payment
Yes.
to these people, and that's why they're complaining about it.
Yep.
So we have to see how this one works out.
Yep. We are up to an item from Echo RI News, RI, of course, being
Rhode Island. Rhode Island bill hinders building of solar facilities in forests. I didn't know there was any forests in Rhode Island.
Environmental groups are pushing back against a bill that outlaws building solar facilities and other renewable energy projects on forest land. It was introduced to address cutting trees to build large-scale solar energy projects. The bill prohibits building of renewable energy systems in or connected to an area, a wooded area of 250 acres or larger. Now, connected to means next to.
Yep.
And that, I can see saying the trees are a carbon sink. We need to leave them there. We shouldn't be cutting them down for solar panels. But this is connected to. This is next to. Why?
Something's going on here that we don't understand.
I don't understand it.
Well, I reading into the article, there was a really large project in a highly in an area that's inhabited, I guess, by wealthy people,
Yes.
a wealthy neighborhood, and there was a lot of opposition to it.
Yes.
And this is a result of that.
Yeah. Well, okay. Should we move on?
Well,
There's more.
There is an error in this article,
Okay.
and it is not prohibiting development. It's prohibiting the construction. It prohibits the use of state incentives and subsidies for those projects.
Aha.
Doesn't say you can't do it.
Okay.
It says the state's not going to pay you.
Thanks for
That's
that.
a big difference.
Okay. Our next item is from a publication called The Lens. And this is an interesting
Oh, this is.
item.
I'm going to put that picture up.
Yeah.
This is funny. This
Yeah,
is really
well, it's
funny.
funny, except it's
funny,
sad.
sad.
This item appeared in The Lens, and The Lens is not a big publication, but other publications all over the country picked this up. And when I first found this, it was several days after The Lens had it, and I could see that these different publications were referring back to The Lens. So I went back to The Lens and put this up.
An interesting coincidence happened to me
Yes,
with this.
yes,
I'm just reading this article so that I can comment on it and all
Yeah.
that. And VPR is talking about exactly the same thing on the radio.
yes.
Actors were paid to support Entergy's power plant in New Orleans City Council meetings. Can you believe that?
Oh, could it be? Is it real? Professional actors were paid to support Entergy's proposal of a gas plant at a New Orleans City Council meetings, according to some participants. Quote, they paid us to sit through the meeting and clap every time someone said something against wind and solar power. One actor said, who heard about the opportunity through a friend. Now, let's put that picture back up again. This is something that was really interesting because one of these actors said that he spotted 15 or so of his friends who were actors among the people who were at this meeting. The
Where they
Entergy
get well paid?
supporters.
It's
Yeah.
$60 just to be there.
Just to be there.
And $200 if you say something.
Yeah, and the people who were employed by Entergy to
Energy
stuff
said they
this-
didn't do it.
The people who claim that they were hired by Entergy are the ones in the orange shirts.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Little takeaway here.
Yep.
Well, this is from the article. They paid us to sit through the meeting and clap every time someone said something against wind and solar.
Yeah.
Paying people, this is a corollary. Paying people to create the illusion of grassroots support is common, but it's known as astroturfing. Okay? Although it's misleading, it appears to be legal. And the New Orleans City Council approved the power plant by a vote of 6-1, so it was effective.
Yes,
Well, the
absolutely.
only thing I can figure out is, since it's commonplace and it goes on, why did they dress all these guys up so they could be recognized?
That was a question that I had, and I think that it may have something to do with keeping track of who's speaking and what they're saying and stuff like that. Anyway,
Well, it worked in any case.
Yes.
They passed a law.
we are up to
Well, the last
Wednesday,
day, we got
May
10
9th.
minutes left. So
right?
We're ahead of the game.
And we've got a picture, which is not by comparison to the picture that we just had, this is not an exciting picture. But this comes from Think Progress.
China reaps the benefits of U.S. solar innovation while American workers are left behind.
Thank you, Donald Trump.
And that's a nice picture of a Chinese apartment house development that's probably empty. Because they built these things all around China and nobody's in them.
The International Renewable Energy Agency reported that over 500,000 new jobs in renewables in 2017, bringing a total to well over 10 million. 2/3 of the solar jobs are in China. But in the U.S., where the technology was developed, solar jobs are on the decline. And, you know, Donald Trump said that he was protecting solar jobs in the United States by putting this tariff on. And that
He's
tariff,
doing exactly the
he's
opposite.
doing exactly the opposite. This is a person who has, I don't know where he gets his information, but he doesn't get it from people who are knowledgeable wise, and have the American best interest at heart, I think.
I think sometimes he just shoots from the hip.
Well, I think that he's told what to say by handlers, to tell you the truth.
Well, that's normal.
Yeah, well, his handlers, I believe, are paid by certain people who bought into power the majority group in the House and the Senate.
Well, there's evidence that that's what happens. In the long term, millions of jobs are at risk from the Trump administration's long list of anti-clean energy policies, with virtually every country in the world, apart from the U.S., currently pushing aggressive policy to promote clean energy and reduce carbon pollution. Clean energy will remain one of the biggest new sources of sustainable, high-wage employment in the world for decades to come.
Yes. Okay. Should we go on?
Yeah, we're coming to the end here.
We are. We are up to an item from CBS News.
Trump withdraws from the Iran deal. That's no surprise. It's all over the airwaves right now.
Yeah.
The next question is, what's next?
President Trump announced that the United States intends not to participate in the Iran nuclear deal, which, by the way, was signed under Obama. But
Yeah.
the Americans did sign it.
Oh,
This
yes.
is a deal.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and will reimpose sanctions. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani responded that Iran may be willing to remain a part of the deal, subject to negotiations with the remaining international partners. Well, who are the remaining international partners?
France, Germany,
The
Italy,
European
Spain.
Union.
Pretty much the entire European Union.
You know, this is an interesting thing because almost instantly, those European partners had well, before Trump said this, they had been lobbying Trump to stay in the deal,
Yes.
and almost
And
instantly
they're kind of upset.
They're upset. They're upset that the United States is not doing its part, and they are negotiating with Iran. Now, Iran has said, if you people, you know, if we can get what we want out of this, then we'll stay in the deal. But
Yeah.
in order to do that, the deal is going to have to be renegotiated to some extent by the Europeans, which means that the Europeans are going to have to give Iran further concessions.
Yeah, they're going to have to give something up.
Meanwhile, who else is on the horizon? Well, China comes to mind. And the Chinese
Absolutely.
are going to be telling the Iranians, look, we've got solar panels for you.
Yeah.
I think China is a beneficiary. Iran is a beneficiary.
Yeah.
Europe is not a beneficiary, but will be driven closer to China and Iran.
It's inevitable.
The biggest loser in this is the United States.
It kind of looks that way.
I just don't see any other way to figure it. It just
Well,
doesn't make sense.
There's bigger bad news buried in this.
Yes.
Because Trump is getting very aggressive toward Iran.
Yes.
Well, this is a quote from Trump. If the regime continues its nuclear aspirations, it will have bigger problems than it has ever had before.
Well, you know, interestingly enough, he doesn't have the backing from other countries to enforce this. Just to give you an example, India, the Indian buyers of foreign fuel, which has been buying something like 250,000 barrels of oil a day from Iran, has said, well, we don't have any guidance that tells us that we have to stop this. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about corporate guidance. Mm-hmm. They're expecting that, you know, they're just going to keep on going. Mm-hmm. Iran is not going to lose any markets out of this that we know of, aside from the United States.
It's just going to shift the market, that's all.
Exactly. And it's also interesting to note that the companies that are doing business in Iran, although they're saying, well, we may have to be prepared to pull out of there, American companies, that's what they're saying. But the stock market didn't react to this. Mm-hmm. There was no change, and the futures market did not react to it. In other words,
Interesting.
in other words, buyers both financial instruments and commodities are saying, well, we think this is basically nothing that Donald Trump has done in terms of how we make money, which means nothing in terms of how the Iranians make money except where they're going to be selling their oil. I think that Donald Trump is in way over his head. He believes that he's in a trade war with China that's going to be easy to win, and he just gave the Chinese a hugely valuable poker chip in that game. Okay, should we move on, Tom?
I think so. We're on to the last.
We have
article
one
we
item
have.
left,
We've got a
and
picture
I
here.
I love this picture. I always like pictures of jack-up ships and things like that. This is from Renewable Energy magazine.
By the way, that's a very large ship. You
Yeah,
can't
it
tell
looks
from
like a
the
rowboat with a bunch of stuff on it, but there's a
That's
reason for
very
that.
large.
That's really big. Yeah. So what do you got for a title?
Seajax, which is the company, wins Taiwan installation contract.
This is an interesting article, and it's important for a couple of reasons. Seajax won a contract in Taiwan, its first order outside of Europe. That's part of the importance. I want to get to that picture in a minute. The 10,000-ton jack-up vessel Zaratan. You know, I read that, and it made me think of Saratan. Do you remember Saratan?
Yeah.
Saratan is nature's spelled backwards.
Yeah.
Zaratan will install 20 6-megawatt wind turbines, that's big, in the Taiwan Strait in water about 30 meters deep, about 6 kilometers off the northwest coast of Taiwan. The work is scheduled to begin in the second quarter of 2019. I want to look at that vessel.
Now, is this Taiwan's first venture in this area? I think it is.
I don't know.
China's- Well, they're not very active in that area.
They're getting active.
Yeah.
But look at that vessel. That looks small because it's so beamy. It looks like a rowboat
Yeah, it does.
because it's short in terms of its length
Yeah.
compared to its width. But this thing has got to be 50 stories tall.
Well, if you look at it, the things with the stripes on it are what's holding the
Those are the
Whoa.
jacks, the 4 big
up off
jacks.
the floor. So
Yeah.
that's why they call them sea jacks.
Yep.
Those tall towers are the towers that are going to support the wind turbines.
Yes.
And the things laying sideways on the deck
Are the blades.
are the blades. And these blades, they're 200 feet at least in length. They're
These
big.
are 6-megawatt turbines. They might be 300.
They might be closer to 300.
In other words, that ship could be 300 feet wide.
It could very well be.
I mean, if you look under the blades, you see the nacelles.
Yep, there they are.
And
Yep.
those things are big enough that you could park buses inside them.
Well, I measured them the last time we talked about it.
Yeah.
2 Greyhound buses would fit side by side with room behind them for another one folded in half.
Yeah.
They're big.
This is a big ship. And Taiwan is putting these things in. That's 120 megawatts of wind turbines that they're putting off their coast.
Well, Taiwan isn't that big of a place.
Yes.
Where most of they're calling it here in the article. But they're moving away from traditional power sources toward renewable energy.
They are indeed.
Big time.
Big time. They're getting rid of their nuclear power.
We ran the clock out.
We did indeed. See you
Goodbye,
next
people.
time.